أشرقت نفسي بنور من فؤادي حينما رددت يا رب العباد وانتشت روحي وصار الدمع يجري يا إلهي خذ بقلبي للرشاد.
Then the author states, first one, subsection, ومن ولدت امرأته أو أمته التي أقر بوطئها ولدا يمكن كونه منه لحقه نسبه لقول رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم الولد للفراش وللعاهر الحجر. If a man's wife or his slave woman with whom he has acknowledged, this is his wife, this is his slave girl, and he has intercourse with her, Jayid. Now this female, she's given birth to a child. And he could be the child's father. It's possible for him to be the child's father, meaning he is married to this female, or meaning that he has intercourse, etc. with the slave girl, Jayid. Then paternity will be attached with this man. This man will be the father of that child. He is the husband of this female, and he is the father of this child, and he sleeps with his slave woman, and then he is the father of that child. This is by default. By default, he is the father. Because of the saying of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the child is for the master of the bed. The child belongs to the master of the bed. The firash is the wife. Firash is the wife, Jayid. And is the al-waladu lil-firash. The firash, technically firash means like bed, and the child is attributed to the bed, or sahibul firash, the person who owns the firash. And who owns the firash? Who does the firash belong to? The wife is linked with the husband. She is under the authority of the husband, and the slave woman is under the authority of the master. And so the child will be attributed to the person who has authority over the firash. The child, meaning, will be attributed to the husband or the master. وَلِلْعَاهِرْ الْحَجَرِ. As for the person who committed zina with this female, Hajar, meaning this person, number one, stone. This person will be stoned to death. Or number two, this means like they are cut off. There's no link. There is, ar upon them. They are distanced. That's the word. They are distanced from this child, and there's no link between them and the child. So any female who is married, she commits zina, by default, the child will be attributed to the husband. Jayid. As for the actual father of the child, he will not be linked up to the child. No paternity, nothing whatsoever. That's by default. Jayid. The author states, وَلَا يَنْتَفِي وَلَدُ الْمَرْأَةُ إِلَّا بِلِعَانٍ. Jayid. And the wife's child is not disavowed except by li'an. So this man, Sulaiman, he's got a wife, Sumayya. She unfortunately has committed zina, she's fallen pregnant. By default, this child will be attributed to Sulaiman. Sulaiman says, I don't want this child is not mine. We say to Sulaiman, you need to do this li'an. Once you do this li'an, then this child will be broken off from you and will not be attributed to you. The wife's child is not disavowed except through li'an, nor the child of the slave woman except by claiming the absence of her istibra. So same with the slave woman. If he cannot possibly be the father, as when his slave woman gives birth within less than 6 months from his sleeping with her, or his wife gives birth when less than that time has elapsed since the cohabitation was possible. Or if the husband is the kind of man who does not father children, he might not be able to have kids, such as the one who is under the age of 10 or is castrated, the child is not attributed to him. So number one, if the man has a wife, she falls pregnant, he does the li'an, and now the kid will not be attributed to him. Or the author states, if for example the man gets married and he was not intimate with his wife before the marriage, etc., and suddenly she falls pregnant and she gives birth before 6 months into the marriage, and the minimum period for pregnancy and delivery is 6 months. If she gave birth after marriage within 3 months, for example, then this is a sign that this child is not from this man here, but maybe she had relations with someone else previously before she got married, and the child is that individual's. So where, although she is married here, but this is impossible for the child to be from him, then obviously the child will not be attributed to this current husband. Jayid. Or if the child is under the age of 6 and the wife under the age of 10 and the wife falls pregnant. Or if, for example, we know that this man cannot have kids, he's castrated, and suddenly the wife falls pregnant. Or the man was gone traveling for 10 years and after 5 years the wife fell pregnant. These are indications that obviously this child is not from him. The author then states, also take note, using a DNA test, paternity test, etc. to negate a child, this would not be valid. This would not be valid. So one does a paternity test, DNA test, and he says, well, you know what, this kid is not mine. But even though he did that, the child would still be attributed to him. He's got the facility of li'an. Through the facility of li'an, that then only would the child be distanced from him and not attributed to him. Otherwise, by default, it will be attributed to him. فصل وإذا وطئ رجلان امرأة في طهر واحد بالشبهة. If two men had intercourse with a woman during a single period of intermenstrual purity between two menses, because of mistaken identity, there was a mix-up. The man comes to the bed, he thought this was his wife, he slept with her and it was dark, etc. مشكلة. Allah musta'an. جيد. Or if two co-owners have sexual intercourse with the slave woman during a single period of intermenstrual purity, two individuals own this female slave and one didn't realize that the other one was sleeping with her, etc. We know that it's impermissible for them to have relations with her, etc. Jayid. And there was a mistake in the matter. This is the matter of shubha. And then she falls pregnant. Jayid. Now what happens? What do we do in this case? أو ادعى نسب مجهول نسب رجلان. Or if two men claim the paternity of the child whose paternity is unknown. We don't know, this was a street child, etc. Two individuals come forward and they both claim that they are the father of the kid. Now what do we do? Uriya al-qafa. Then these individuals who are masters at looking at this child, looking at the father, looking at that father who's claiming, and they link up and they say, well, you know what, this kid is the father, is the child of that man. This kid, no, is the mother, is the child of this man here. So they do these linking up, etc., called the qafa. Then we go to the qafa and we say, well, whose child is this? And they do a ruling and they are just and they are trustworthy. Then we link up the father to the child based upon the answer of the qafa. Obviously today we have DNA testing and that would be much more accurate than even the ruling of the qafa. So obviously DNA testing with regards to attribution, with regards to acknowledging paternity, no problem whatsoever. But using DNA, etc. to deny, then this is an issue. We rather say, and we say that the proper method, you can use it as, not as your primary reason for denial. You can use it as help, etc. But you cannot use DNA in the complete denial that this child, based upon the DNA, this child is not my child, full stop, I want to have nothing to do with the child. No. You need to go one step further, which is the step of li'an. As for attribution, DNA can be used, no problem whatsoever. Why? Because the Sharia loves and wants, that the child has a father and someone looks after the kid. As for denial, as for breaking of ties, then this is a much more severe matter. And so higher levels are required of certainty. معهما أو مع أقاربهما فألحق بمن ألحقوه به منهما وإن ألحقوه بهما لحق بهما وإن أشكل أمره أو تعارض أمر القافة أو لم يوجد قافة ترك حتى يبلغ فيلحق بمن انتسب إليه منهما ولا يقبل قول القائف إلا أن يكون ذكرا عدلا مجربا في الإصابة. Jayid. And the child will then be assigned to whichever of them they attributed, whichever father the qafa attributes the child to, this man will be linked up with the kid. If they attribute the child to both of them, its paternity will be assigned to both of them. Jayid. Obviously today we will not have a situation like this because you have DNA testing, etc. If the problem is hard to resolve, or the qafa, they disagree, or no qafa can be found, the decision must be left until the child reaches puberty, and then the child chooses whoever he wants to go with, whichever man he wants to go with. The word of the qafa will not be accepted unless he is fair, he is just, he is honest, and he is skilled in the matter, and he has experience. Jayid. And that was the chapter of li'an. One last mas'ala, and that's the mas'ala which happens many a time. We have issues and problems in the West, where, for example, we have a female who is not married. Remember the hadith which we mentioned, al-waladu lil-firash. The child belongs to the firash, the person who owns or has authority over the firash. Firash meaning that woman, meaning that wife. So the husband, the child belongs to the husband of his wife. What happens if a female does not have a husband? So she is not like a firash, she does not have a husband. So here she has fallen into the mushkila, the problem. She's committed zina and she falls pregnant. And let's say she does not get married to this man. But this man comes forward and he says, you know what, this is my child. This is really my child, and I want the child to be attributed to me. I did not get married to her, I know that, and I don't want to get married to her, but this child is my child and I want the child to be attributed to me, take my surname, inherit from me, etc., etc. If it's a daughter, then I will be the wali over her, etc. Jayyid. In this case here, Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah, as opposed to majority of the scholars, Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah states that if the man acknowledges that this is his child, number one, and number two, she did not have a husband at the time of falling into zina, then his attribution will be valid and this child will be linked up to this father. Right? And this opinion, a rather strong opinion, and also helps with many of the mashakil and problems, etc., that one faces in the West. So we state, if the female, she's fallen into zina, and if she gets married to remember, according to majority of the scholars, if, for example, this female, she's fallen into zina, she falls pregnant, and then later on she gets married to the man who she had committed zina with, still, even though they got married, this child will not be attributed to her husband now. It will not be attributed to the father of the child. Why? Because this is a product of zina, and this child will be attributed to the mother. Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah states, whether they get married, whether they don't get married, if he acknowledges that this is his child and she did not have another husband at the time, then the child will be attributed to their father. Wallahu ta'ala a'lam. The author then moves on to the chapter Bab al-Hadana, the chapter pertaining to the custody of the child. If husband and wife get a divorce, then who has more rights with regards to the matter of custody? Take note. We discussed the masail with regards to custody if there is niza, if there is conflict between husband and wife. But if husband and wife come to some sort of an agreement that, you know what, up to a certain age you look after him, weekends I will have him, you look after her, then alhamdulillah, if they mutually agree, fantastic, brilliant, that's the best case and that's the best course of action. But when there is niza, then we go back to what the fuqaha have listed and we look at the ahadith of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, etc. Also take note, the mas'ala of custody is to do with who is best for the child. We always want to hold the best interests of the child at heart. Not really the parents, who make them happy, etc. But rather, who is best with regards to the interests of the child. The author states, Bab al-Hadana. أحق الناس بالطفل أمه ثم أمهاتها وإن علون. The people most, and also take note, with regards to the matters of custody, then the custody, one has to take care of the child with regards to providing for the child, food and clothing, accommodation. Number two, protection of the child, safety of the child. And number three, the tarbiyah and the upbringing of the child. These three masail fall within the whole overarching subject of hadana or custody. And the person who is given custody, the person must be a Muslim, must be baligh, must be mature, must be trustworthy, must have the ability to look after this child. They must be free, and also if it is the mother, she must not remarry. She has more right to custody for as long as she does not remarry, as we will discuss. The person most entitled to be in charge of the child, entitled to be in charge of the child's upbringing are the following in order of priority. Number one, the mother. The mother has more right with regards to the child. We're talking about a tifl. We're not talking about a kid who's 10 or 12 years old. We're talking about the baby. We're talking about the kid. Jayyid, this is the mother according to consensus ijma of the scholars. And if the mother is not around, or if the mother remarries, Sulaiman Sumayya got divorced, and 5 months later Sumayya, she remarries. So the young boy Ahmed, she does not have more right to look after Ahmed. If, for example, the husband says, no, I don't want you to be looking after our son Ahmed, because the husband you got married to, I don't like this man, and I don't want my son to be brought up in his house, Jayid, then she loses the right of custody. If the husband is obviously quite okay with it, and he says, no problem, you know what, you look after Ahmed, and your new husband, you know, he's okay, alhamdulillah. But if he objects, then she loses the right of custody because she remarried. And why? Because I don't want my child to be brought up in the house of this man here, being influenced by this man, etc. It's the mother, and then her mother and grandmothers above. Jayid. So when she loses custody, it goes to her mother, etc. Then the author states, ثُمَّ الْأَبْ ثُمَّ أُمَّهَاتِهِ. Then after that, if it's not the mother, if it's not grandmother, etc., then it goes off to the father of the child. He gets more rights. And then if he's not allowed around, then it's his mother and further grandmothers above. ثُمَّ أُمَّهَاتِهِ ثُمَّ الْجَدْ ثُمَّ أُمَّهَاتِهِ. After that, if his mothers are not around, then it's the grandfather, the father's father, the grandfather, and then his mother and grandmothers above. If they're not around, ثُمَّ الْأُخْتِ مِنَ الْأَبَوَيْنِ. Then the father's full sister. ثُمَّ الْأُخْتِ مِنَ الْأَبِ. Then the paternal sister, the father's paternal sister. Jayid. The sister on the full sister, number one, the father's full sister. After that, the sister on the father's side, meaning the paternal sister of the father. Then the maternal sister, the sister on the, not the sister on the mother's side, but rather the sister of the father on the father's mother's side. So basically, the father's maternal sister.